And then suddenly I turned to the rearview mirror and I started to crash. It's that the girl, here comes, here comes, here comes. And we had to pull over so she could calm down. The aggression was too much. They didn't throw things at me. It did happen to my brother-in-law. They did throw pans at him from the kitchen. And suddenly it started. A very strong smell of dampness enveloped the whole house. My wife suddenly said, I want to go to the patio. I told her, no, man, I've already cleaned up the patio. I want to go to the patio. And since she was looking lost, I told her, no more. This has gotten ugly. Let me take her out and put her in the car. As we crossed the main door, a strong blast of hot air hit our faces.
Come on, come on. I felt the heat, very intense, as if I had walked through flames of fire. I said, something there is actually hurting me.
It was where we already said it's physical now. These are physical aggressions. I feared more for what they would do to them than for myself. In his fascinating account, Arturo Moroco Palacios will transport us to one of the most terrifying experiences of his life, carried out in one of the most haunted houses in Mexico, the setting for the first episode of the famous show Haunted Latin America. How's it going? I'm Arturo Palacios, alias Moroco. I'm a broadcaster, host, in quotes, content creator. I don't like it, much less the influencer thing, but well, here we are. At your service. What initially seemed like the promise of a new home for him and his family soon turned into an unimaginable nightmare. He tells us in detail how his wife became the main victim of an attempted possession by a dark entity, which, as they discovered later, had been buried in the vicinity of the property. We had already had some experiences. In my case, I also had some at my workplace, at Multimedia's radio and television. But if they hadn't been as strong as the ones we had later, both on the road and in some places, and obviously in the house where we were living, I have always been of trying to find the logical explanation. Obviously, if you believe in something that is there, that can arise, as they call energies, because I repeat, some things had happened to me working in the studios that I did have some experiences. On one occasion, I was in the television studio from that time of 99, which is the station where I was. At that time, it had radio and television. It was a Monday. I remember well, because on Mondays I had just started. I would start at 6 in the morning, finish at 10, and then I had a meeting at noon. At that time I was on a bus, and I couldn't be moving around like that. I would lose a day on the way there and back. And on Mondays I was with Alex and Daniel, the spoiled ones, and we would go to the program that Laura had there on television in the afternoon. And I would stay, well, I'm going to sleep for a little while. The studio crew would tell me, behind the curtain is a curtain that divided the studio. There's a couch there. I slept. There's a couch. You can sleep there? Okay. I laid down. I was with the air conditioning, and I started to feel a little cool, and I covered myself with the same curtain. At one point, I felt sorry that someone was watching me, and I opened my eyes and saw a person standing in front of me, but only the silhouette was visible. And I said, well, it's one of the colleagues who comes to see what's up. Everything is fine, or comes to play a joke on me. I don't know. No, he didn't say anything, and I just said, what's up? And nothing. And suddenly they lifted, what is the curtain? And as if he lay down there next to me, and at the moment of covering himself, he disappears. And I was left like that, somewhat surprised. And I said, well, who knows? On another occasion, I entered the bathroom on the 3rd floor of the radio building, and that place, well, it ends there. It's not a hallway that ends in the bathroom. And there's a window at the back that, well, it was the 3rd floor, and there was nothing below. It was the courtyard, right? And it had its mosquito net. I went into the bathroom and was now in my business. And I hear the door open, and the door was wooden, but it had already widened due to humidity. And well, it scraped, and well, I heard the steps. And the typical thing one does, like, so they don't open the bathroom door, and he hears the steps from one side to another, and the door he had closed, he opened and closed it. And then he approaches where the window is, where the sink was. You can hear the window being opened, and then nothing was heard. I went out and there was no one else. I said he couldn't have gone through the window because it's a precipice that would have come out, that someone fell, and besides, the mosquito net was in place and the door closed. And they had already told me that suddenly things were heard on that same third floor. We were on a radio program at midnight. The distortion program, I remember, with Gerardo Guario and Jose Luis Montañez. And we started playing soccer with a ball, and it was also near there. It was a hallway, and it ended at the stairs to go up to that third floor. And everything was booths that were locked because they were where they were warehouses. They filed things, and you could hear footsteps. Ah, here comes the watchman. The guard is coming, and he is going to scold us. And you can hear the footsteps as if they are going up the stairs, and you can't hear anything. And we peek out and nothing, and we peek into the hallway and nothing, and that was it. It had been snails. It had only been those things near where I lived. I was coming at night after, I don't remember, from working under the truck in the road. I asked him, it was like 4 blocks to get home and 2 blocks before there is a kindergarten, and further on there is a temple, those non-Catholic temples, those praise temples. Praise Center, that's what it's called. And I was coming, it was like 1 in the morning, more or less. There was a lady with a child walking, and I said, well, maybe the child doesn't want to sleep. She's going to tire him out, so he'll sleep. Being a few meters in front of me, they vanished, and I got home very taken aback. Oh, I thought maybe it's someone who died around there from an old neighborhood. The typical situation, right? Where there's a kindergarten and there are always some manifestations. So the most that had happened to me, but already with my wife, the situation got a little more intense and it was very, very distant, right? The things that happened to me, I don't know, it was because, to tell you, in 2001, another in 2003, another in 2005, but already with Betty, we had more experiences. She captures a lot of sounds, even images. And well, now it seems like some spirits get very close to her. I don't know, they see in her that makes it attractive to approach, maybe looking for, I don't know, some help or something. Well, she's always been very, how can I put it? She's never been much for socializing, right? She's like that, a circle and a little closed off. In fact, she struggled a lot with me because I'm at work surrounded by many people, also many women. And it was like she didn't like it much, but she's getting used to it. And she's not one to have many friends either. She has about 4 or 5 friends, which is her entire circle. She says that she struggles a lot when accompanying me to some event because I spend my time greeting everyone and they come and greet us, and there she already struggles because she is not used to it. That, but she told me that on one occasion she was about to die. They were taking her in an ambulance. She was in the open and she was practically dying. They operated on her, but they overdid the anesthesia, and this. She says that she did see things at that moment, but well, that she came back and that from there she started to have that sensitivity to hear some voices, hear sounds, see some, I don't know what to call them, but well, see things. There were 2 occasions that San Luis or from Guanajuato, but already on the highway. San Luis or from Guanajuato, but already on the highway there in Matehuala. Something very curious happened. We heard a whistle inside the car with the windows up and everything, but a whistle, it's not possible. Let's see if it's not. The window, they asked, who lowered it? No, nobody. And further on, we saw one. What do they call it? An altar by the side of the road, but it had a lit candle. Yes, we all saw it, but my wife says, what was the girl doing there? The girl was standing there alone on the side. And then suddenly I looked at the rearview mirror and started to crash. It's that the girl is coming, she's coming, she's coming. And we had to pull over so she could calm down. That was one. On another occasion, it was just the two of us, her and I, coming from Saltillo, hearing the whistle. Oh, you do it. How strange. And to hear the whistle. Oh, you do it. What? Strange. And the head, well, on a curve, it touches a curve towards turning to the left. I was the co-pilot. And my wife says to me, what are those old people doing walking around here? She told me not to mess with her, insisting that the old people were on my side and that she saw everything despite there being no one and nothing to see. And she turned pale and got a bit nervous. Those have been those road things we went to. That house we were living for a while at my parents' house. When we started living together, we went to that house, but I didn't realize of many things because I would leave in the morning to work. I would take the kids to take them to her job, and she would already pick up the kids, return to her job, and she would already pick up the kids, return. When I would arrive very late at night because between radio, television, and also singing in bars, my day would go by and I would arrive in the early morning. But suddenly it started with some comments from the kids who said that there is a man who hits there at the window, at the glass of the window. Her room faced the street. I was looking for the logical explanation. It's a man who is drunk and who is there being malicious. And besides, the house is near a conflictive colony. Well, we moved them from the room to the closed patio, fenced and all, and he said they continued receiving those screams, those blows on the window from that man. Then my wife told me that on one occasion the children were watching television in their room and she was arranging things in the living room and other places. Towards the room, there is the kitchen and the bathroom, and then there is their room. And they were watching cartoons. At one point, she turns around and sees that the door is open and sees a child. And she said, when you leave the bathroom, turn off the light and close the door. She continued doing her thing and she turns around and sees the bathroom door open and the light on, and they just don't listen to me. She went to the room. I told them that when they leave the bathroom, turn off the light and close the door, and then they turn around. We haven't gone to the bathroom, and then who left the door open and the light on and turned around? It was already closed. She started to see these things. She told me that she woke up. One of those times I woke up, but I was screaming. And my arms hurt because they were open, and it came off very strange. Then in front and two ovoids at the height of the kidneys. In front and two ovoids at the height of the kidneys, but perfectly symmetrical, and his fangs began to grow. It was something that did impress me. And it was, let's say, the beginning, only her. Only she experienced it, felt it, did something very strange. It happens to her that I did something very strange to her. It happens to her that I go for the logical explanation because she's suddenly with her eyes open, but she's asleep, and I can have a conversation with her, but she's asleep. I was not used to it. I mean, I didn't know. She said, hey, I told you last night, I talked to you last night. I was asleep, but you were sitting there with your eyes open, looking at me and talking. I said, oh, no. I attributed it to her getting up while still asleep and going to the patio, but when she told me she was levitating, I couldn't find any logic in that. But it was like that. The fact that we were living at my parents' house because the youngest child was born. We have Eddie and Dario and the older ones, and Gabriel, who is the youngest, had some problems with his breathing. He was also born prematurely. He was in an incubator, and in order to take good care of him, we stayed at my parents' house so that your mom could help us, my sister, and a little bit with both with the kids for school and with Gabrielito with health issues. Then we are going over there, well, to our house, but yes, they started to. Some strange things started happening, at least with them. I repeat, I didn't notice many things because I was hardly at home. Almost nothing happened to me. In the end, was where things happened to me. I tried to find something, but when I saw that the marks started to appear, I think just with the marks on the body was where, yes. And listen, well, maybe it's a gust of wind that, and listen, well, maybe it's a gust of wind that got in. I don't know. But
Other things happened. I remember they left toys scattered all over the house, and at night when you were asleep, well, I would pick up the toys, but the next day I would realize that on the living room couch the toys appeared lined up, arranged. I said to myself, someone is entering the house. I'm alone with two children. What's happening? My mind started to spin and worry about the safety of you two. You were very small. You were all my responsibility. Feel fear. The idea of imagining it was something paranormal scared me so much. Halloween was approaching and we were something paranormal.
was approaching. Well, Halloween, and we were still at home. It was a weekday, Thursday, Wednesday, I don't remember. Well, the kids were busy with something they had been assigned at school, making a kite, and they went to a nearby little hill to look for branches to start making it. And she went with them, she accompanied them, and she twisted her ankle. We were already sitting there on the porch in the room, and we had the monitor, the typical monitor that the room, and we had the monitor, the typical monitor that it's a little camera and a microphone. We had the monitor out here. It was in image and also audio. And there was a little friend of theirs, a little friend from the neighborhood. You hear the TV on, you hear cartoons, and you heard the TV on, you hear cartoons, and you heard a noise. And Karen, let me see if maybe the child woke up, and at one point he clicked the remote and turned on the TV. The child asleep, the television off, the remote control out of his reach again. Maybe it's an electronic device. An interference came in. It picked up another signal and it was heard. Child, he's already awake. You heard the crying, so I went, child, he's already awake. You heard the crying, so I went to the room. I slept, television off. How strange. It was the other one, and the signal came in, well, later. Well, and the signal came in. Well, then, later, the alarm already went off. Well, he's already awake. He's already in the Porsche. My wife got in now. We were, the kid and I, in the smallest Porsche, and the kid was walking. He was just starting to take his steps, and he was walking. He was just starting to take his steps. And at one point, I wanted to pick him up. It was already dark. It was already night. He had a ponytail. And where I wanted to pick him up, he had a ponytail. And where I wanted to pick him up, the child pulls his arms back and tells me, no, no, but what happened? And where I pick him up, they pull my hair back. And I turn around and, well, there was no one. It was just him and I in the middle of the house porch. It wasn't like someone was there and I go with the child to the room. My wife was there. I told her, you know what? They pulled my hair and then she tells me, look, there was a children's cart moving by itself back and forth. And this was when I told her, you know what? Grab the kids. Take them, go in your car. I'll close everything up and leave. Go to my parents' house and I'll catch up with you. That's when we said it's physical now. They're being physically aggressive. I wasn't so much afraid for myself, but what they would do to them. One can still get into fights or brawls, but I said, no, they're messing with them, with the kids, my wife, let's go. They recommended a lady to us. They recommended my wife to a lady who does work with angels. I honestly don't know about that. And take a picture of the house from the outside so it can be seen. We take the windows, door, and front of the house. The photo, and at the moment, when seeing it later, we had to download it to the computer and send it in. The window shadows were seen and not. There was no one in the house afterwards. We went again. We had time that we were not, and the neighbor arrived with us greeting, and between joke and joke, oh neighbor, what good parties you make, why don't you invite? It was like between joke and claim, and says, why? It's that last weekend there was a lot of people and very tall people and in black and all, and this, my husband, what's up with the people who are there? Ah, well, it's because they are rockers and they are his friends. There was no one in the house. There was the president of a neighbor next to the house that a mason was doing a job, and she asked my husband, hey, couldn't you tell the mason yes? How much would you charge me to make a small ramp for the car for the garage? And he says, oh neighbor, I don't think he would want to, because once it fell on him, a tool there towards his yard, neighbor, and that you came out and insulted him very ugly. The neighbor, and that you came out and insulted him very ugly, and this, my husband didn't say anything, but we weren't there. And another neighbor also came and said, hey neighbor, I came to look for you and I was knocking on the window. I think you were asleep, because he ends already snails already. Afterwards, we found out that afterwards we found out that supposedly they're, according to what the lady told us, they had buried two people who had been very bad. That is what she explained to us, and that they were so deep that, well, they didn't come out. Normally when they are building some subdivision, something, suddenly they find some bones, they stop the situation, and there goes the investigation, and that's it. They returned, but in this case, since it didn't come out well there, they continued, and they were maybe doing the damage there. Here, the sad thing, at least for me, it does upset me, is that there is a child, is an innocent soul who, well, truthfully did not harm or anything, just mischievous, nothing more. I remember that Halloween was approaching, and it was where my wife had her fangs grown the most, and she had marks on her body, and that lady had said, you know what, bathe her with this soap that has been worked on. Honestly, I don't understand that.
She recommended that I do certain rituals to cleanse myself of those energies through baths with essences. I had to be accompanied by someone else while I was taking these baths with a prayer, and you and your mom were with me. That's when I started to pull out that very long hair, and I couldn't get it out, and I thought it had no end. I mean, it was such a long thing, and it was something that impacted me a lot.
While bathing my wife, she began coughing and gagging as an extremely long hair emerged from her mouth. And he says, the lady said, when I've seen her, or this time we did this and it came out, oh well, we've already taken it out. Because she wanted to possess you, a possession. And she told him, by the day of October 31st at noon, you have to say this prayer, but there has to be someone with you. It has to be exactly at noon. It's the prayer, and then you just say your name in a certain space. Well, he was already with her. We were on the second floor of my parents' house. My mom was holding the baby and was waiting for my children and my nephew to come home from school. and she started to pray. She finishes, and I ask her how she feels. She says she's very tired, lies down, and falls asleep. But about 2, 3 minutes passed. She opens her eyes, and they were completely white. She gets up and starts to talk. I don't know in what dialect, I don't know what language it was. And then I got scared and I yelled, Mom, did something happen to Betty? She asked me if I had holy water. I said yes and asked her what occurred to her. Right? Do you have? Yes, the holy water is down here. I ran for holy water and started sprinkling holy water on my wife. She reacted after I gave her a drink when nothing was happening. And she felt very tired, sore, and I asked her what happened. And I tell her, no, well, this, and this happened. I mean, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have believed it. And that's when logic went to another level, right? It was the most complicated thing we experienced. It happened that we already left the house. A few days later, we had to return because, we left the furniture. One, and well, we have to go feed it, right? And bring it with us. Well, we have to go feed it, right? And bring it with us. I don't know. We arrived. My parents accompanied us with my wife. Well, she already looked for the papers. But here I was very surprised that we arrived and the fish tank had water. It had its little motor there for the air. It had its food and everything. And there were no traces of hay. Well, there are two. And there were no traces of hay. Well, it's 2 days without water. Well, there we would have seen the fish's corpse. I don't know. Absolutely. No. Well, my parents are leaving now. Everything is fine. Yes, we have already taken some things. They also helped us with that, and they have already left. Right now, we catch up. I went to the yard to store the things we have there, washing machine and so on, because that had not been left to things. And suddenly it started, a strong smell of humidity enveloped us throughout the house. And my wife suddenly stared and told me, I want to go to the yard. I told her, no, man, I already stored that. She was with a lost look. And I said, she was already with a lost look. And I said, no more, no more. This has already gotten ugly. Let me take it out and put it in the car. As we crossed the main door, a blast of intense hot air struck our faces.
I felt a very intense heat, as if I had walked through flames of fire. I said, something there is really hurting me.
We didn't think much of it. I put her in the car and sat her down. I started to close everything and grab the last thing I was missing. But the moment to leave and close the door occurred to me and say, see you there, jerks, and I closed. Get in the car, and I faced my wife and she's totally red. My face is burning. Well, let's go. I start the car, nothing. The car is dead, and my wife, let's go. Wait a little. I get out of the car and push it 2 houses further, and it started without problems. And we left already. Then I started to go alone to pick up things little by little. The second time I went, they arrived and the fish tank full of water. Well, the fish was not there. The rocking chairs on the porch started to move on their own very strongly. And I still, now, you bastards, they cost me expensive. I still haven't finished paying for them. I stopped them and grabbed them. I took them with me. I loaded it into the truck and started again to load some things. I don't know, furniture. When I was taking Gabriel's toys that were small at that time, I grabbed a cart, they knocked it out of my hand. I grabbed it again and they knocked it down again. And that's when I remembered that they had told me there was a child. I grabbed the cart, I placed it on a chair and told my son he could play with it. I took it, I went again another day and the cart was in another place. The wind started to blow hard. I did something really strange. And the door started to close. But I didn't pay it any mind. They're not going to scare me. It was already an aggression if they're going to attack me. Maybe there I would have had more respect, caution, but as I also verbally fought or started saying things, they would get angry, but the aggression wasn't too much. They didn't throw things at me. My brother-in-law did have pans thrown at him from the kitchen. That on one occasion he was in his room and he felt something get on the bed and he said, oh, a cat got in, and he grabbed it and it vanished and there was nothing. And he says that he saw the child. He did see the child, that he saw him standing outside the room in the distance, and suddenly a pan also flew from the kitchen to the room. And that's when, that I already chickened out. We tried to bless the house. They couldn't get in. The priest tried and couldn't, sweating buckets. And he said, no, I need to bring the prayer army, something like that. Then more people he never came back. That was something shocking, isn't it? And seeing the priest sweating like that is something that I've only ever seen in movies. The next thing I felt compelled to ask might even seem antagonistic, but I asked him if his wife or his wife's family had any history of mental health issues, such as schizophrenia or mania. I did this considering the amount of cases of demonic possession or ghostly apparitions that in many cases are easily debunked by mental health issues, and I want to make it clear that I did this with utmost respect. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. I mean, that was, and I tell you, several years ago, it's been a while, that you don't see such strong things. Like, for example, it's usually after there's an altar that has some candle or something. I don't know, like it's in honor of the people who died, and probably a little girl had died or an old couple got up, right? But not of things that happen to him all the time. No, everything has been very calm. I don't remember how long before Halloween they came out, but it happened that, the fangs. Well, a dentist who limits me, that stuff. They grew back and the marks were made very clear. It was as if it had been with a razor, but perfect. And the cross on the forehead. Yes. How can I put it to you? Clean. Then they disappeared, and the fangs did too. But it's something very curious. I don't remember how long it lasted, but it was at least a few weeks. He calmed down. He didn't have any more problems. We also left that house. The house is still standing. The house is inhabited by another family. When the Netflix special previous advertising, that there is a case in Apodaca and people started to talk about their things, but it said totally new cases, and people said if it's a house, I live around that place, and now it's a kindergarten and they killed one there, boy or a girl. They demolished the house and it's a kindergarten. And no, I have heard that it gets criticized a lot because when I leave, because it gets criticized a lot. Because when I leave, because we contacted us to tell the story, we were not hired as actors. They do the dramatization and they started to someone from multimedios. And it's not true, that is not someone from multimedia, and it's not true, that is not the house, it's not there. But that is another case entirely. I think the one people were mentioning was a neighborhood. I think Moises Science and not here. It is very nothing to do with it's very nothing to do with it was a new neighborhood at that time. And we're talking about 2007 or so, around those years, or a little before. Live and listen. Did you live in such a neighborhood, such a street, such a number? Listen. Did you live in such a neighborhood, such a street, such a number? I tell him yes. Why? I tell him it is that I am living here. Hey, nothing happened to you? And he tells me yes, two, three little things, and that's it. I talk to him. Well, because this happened to us. No, if anything, we haven't had anything serious. If anything, the boy. That on one occasion I only heard him say, "Mom and I was alone," says the girl, the person who lives there. It's a family, it's the dad, mom, and a child. But the dad and the child were not there. But I asked her, "Hey, don't you want to talk about your case or something?" And she didn't want anything. Many people have told me they want to record the house, but it's inhabited by another family. I have to respect the privacy. For that reason, I don't give the address because people will obviously go to bother. There are many people who do it. Lesfa, if the person had told me, you know what, yes, there it is. If they want to go and investigate, talk about something, there it is. But no, and that is respected. The elders, yes. The thing about the man at the window and the week, and he said, "Hey, I'm currently looking for a place to live. Lend me your house." No, man, this happened. Don't worry. And he went through some tough things, and he said, "No, man, you know what? I'm leaving." I talked about part of this house story on the show. On a multimedia program, seriously. At that time, Kike Mayagoy and Tia Yadera Marcelo were hosting. I was invited. I had to go with Lily Brillanti and my compadre Ricardo Osorio, the former footballer Lily Brillanti, the host and actress Ricardo Osorio, former professional footballer. And they had there the dynamic of telling some paranormal thing that each one has lived. And I talked about part of what happened at the house. What was the hair heel thing and all those things. And yes, they did a dramatization there afterwards in a Halloween radio special in 1999. I also talked about it. It's there on the networks. I don't remember the year, but you can search for it there, and I talk about it there. A friend of my wife and mine, Anna, I don't know if she knows Samudio or knows someone with Mr. Samudio. And they were talking about some stories that we were commissioned for a production. New horror stories, and she told him, "Man, I have friends who this happened to." And they contact us through her. They contact us first, and then they put us in touch with the Netflix production. They do individual interviews with the people who were involved in the case. First, the people from Samudio, then the production people for Netflix. And that's where they were very interested in the case, and they invited us to tell the story, to narrate the story. For in Mexico, there were several people from Mexico because there were others in Mexico. There were several people from Mexico because there were other cases that flew us to Colombia, and we talked in the studio. There they hosted us separately, everyone. When we went to record, there we went together. We were in the studio, a more or less black studio, with some paintings. Also the decoration, let's say old, and candles. When we were chatting, I don't know if the power went out in the studio twice. Some candles started to have a strange activity, and we had those situations, and the equipment failed at some point. Despite having lived an experience at some point, despite having lived and experienced that, and his sense of humor helped him and his family to alleviate the tension of such a terrifying moments that afflicted them. We did overcome that, the terrifying moments that they afflicted. We did overcome that. We have it as something that happened to us that was shocking, but well, we were able to get out because obviously you see some cases of people who do struggle a lot. I think that because of the way I am in life, that we take things up to a certain point with humor, I think that helped us a lot to overcome it. I was worried about the kids, but the little ones have grown up and are doing their own thing, and no. We don't talk much about that, not because we're scared, but because, well, it has become something anecdotal. Well, then I'm still on radio, I'm still on television, I'm still narrating professional football matches. Well, I was 18 years with them all on the Los Manriquez radio show. We ended our relationship because we couldn't stand each other anymore. No, it's already done. Enough already. We did so much already. What we did already there, it stayed. We prefer to go out the big door than to be pitiful. Doing comedy for some time. For that reason, also Molly was already there. With Franco Escamilla working there with the Diablo squad. Franco invites me as well to do that. I'm with Sergio Mejorado, also comedian, Christian Mesa, another comedian. I'm also doing my things with Juan Alfaro, another comedian who is the Arab or the Mr. Green. He has many characters. For them with players and ex-players, and that's it. Things for them with players and ex-players, and already things of the paranormal notice that they never invite me, but I tell them it's not going to happen because not that I take everything as a joke, but if not suddenly, I look for some quip, and I think that many people do not like that. That's why also what a mess, because this one is just playing, just what a mess, because this one is just playing, just making jokes. But I think it was to cope the complicated situation, right? For my family. I was trying there to get them out of that stressful moment. Moroco still works as a broadcaster and internet host after experiencing paranormal situations. He does not seek to focus on that past due to paranormal situations. He does not seek to focus on that topic, letting what happened in that house and the narrations of the events speak for themselves. My official networks, but I had to put it because they hacked me official, but I had to put it because they hacked me from networks Moroco Palacios, like that with a C. All the people, yes, networks Moroco Palacios, like that with a C. All the people, yes, if they are going through a difficult time, a paranormal situation. Still seek help, maybe I could tell them. But not all people are the same. Maybe for that it's more complicated. Look for people there serious, because there are also many people who like it a lot. Playing many content creators. And how curious that they go to a cemetery and always come out like 15 dead, 14 witches, and they all defeat them with a wand. If they look for more serious people, I don't know if to call it professional, but people who dedicate themselves to that and who are studious now to be able to cope with it, to be able to detach themselves from all that. Remember that if you have any story that you would like to tell in a video, whether you are here in Mexico or in another part of the world, you can send me a message on Instagram, which is Pepe Misterio Mex. You can email me at correopepemisterio.com.mx or contact me on Facebook, where my username is Pepe Misterio.